Therapy can feel incredibly overwhelming at the start, and the wait lists are astronomical. The terminology is really hard to understand sometimes, and I think mostly it's the fear of opening up and just generally starting to process what happened to you.
I didn't realize how much baggage I had.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, it was a sort of a feeling of overwhelm at the time. And also that was the realization in that moment that I needed something else. I called Samaritans. I just couldn't cope. And I just felt like I really needed help in that moment, like massively needed help.
I called the NSPCC helpline back in 2017, and that was like a big turning point for me as well. I genuinely think if I hadn't have called them, I don't know where I would be right now. I genuinely don't know. I thought, it's going to fix me. I'm going to be okay. I'll have some talking therapies. I'll get over it. No, so that has not happened. Yeah, it's not. We're not just what happened to us. We are so many other things, and therapy does do that. Hello and welcome back to the Be Brave podcast. I'm your host Chloe, and today we are talking about something that so many survivors struggle with, which is therapy. Where do you start? How do you know what's right for you? What actually is out there? And what can help specifically with trauma from child sexual abuse? Therapy can feel incredibly overwhelming at the start, and the wait lists are astronomical. The terminology is really hard to understand sometimes, and I think mostly it's the fear of opening up and just generally starting to process what happened to you. So today I am joined by the lovely Emma, and together we're going to break it all down for you, the different types of therapy, how to access it, and what has helped us personally, and then also some grounding exercises that you can use during this episode or right after. So, Emma, thank you for joining me today. You are someone that understands trauma and healing and the bravery it takes to even consider therapy. Together, we are going to talk openly and honestly about our own experiences with therapy and what we've learned along the way. So, hi, Emma, how are you?
Hi, Chloe. Lovely to be here. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. I'm good. My doggie's here, and he's either going to be great or he's going to be a bit of a pain. But I want to mention him because he's a massive part of my therapy. So I definitely want to add him into the mix later after we get going. But yeah, I'm good, thank you. Glad it's Friday and it's now not raining. So that's lovely because all week it has been horrific. I don't know where you're based, but it's just been raining the whole week. It's just been miserable.
Yeah, it's been pretty miserable here too, although the sun did come out yesterday, so I hope it stays.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's where I am, it's pretty cloudy, so I don't know how long it's going to last, but cool. So before we talk about different therapies, I want to sit with something that comes up a lot and how scary it can be to just start. So do you remember the first time that you considered therapy, and when you did, what came up for you emotionally?
Sure. It was, I guess, the first time I encountered therapy rather than considering it, actually. It was handed to me without me really understanding what it was. So I had a fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue diagnosis. So this must have been around 2015, 2016. So, gosh, nearly 10 years ago. How time flies. And as part of that diagnosis, I'm really fortunate to live near Bath, where there's a really good rheumatology department at the hospital. And they have, or they did at the time, I don't know if they still do now, but they had a sort of a fibromyalgia course, which sounds a bit bizarre, but it's a course that sort of helps you navigate diagnosis and giving you coping mechanisms and strategies to help you manage pain and to manage also your sort of feelings and emotions that go alongside the feelings that are going on in your body. And when I completed that course, they offered me a few sessions of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And because it's felt I guess I felt really fortunate that I was even offered that course as well as CBT, knowing that a lot of people travel across the country to access that offer of help and support, and that there are waiting lists. And I just happened to be squeezed in really almost straight away. I had a really good doctor at the time. And so I just went along with it, not really understanding half of what it was. And I'd heard of CBT before. So I just went along with it. And it wasn't until I attended my first session that I guess I realized actually that I really needed some kind of therapy, but this one didn't really feel right for me at the time. I think it helped me with my fibromyalgia diagnosis, certainly gave me coping mechanisms and strategies to help when things felt particularly overwhelming. But I think because during those sessions, I started to talk to the therapist, and I could tell that she was going to be really understanding, but at the same time was like, this isn't the place for that sort of talking therapy. It wasn't talking therapy. And I knew that, but it was like this beaker inside of me was just spilling over in that moment. It's suddenly like I was in this space which felt really safe. And I didn't realize how much baggage I had.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, it was a sort of a feeling of overwhelm at the time. And also that was the realization in that moment that I needed something else, I think, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. I mean, mine was sort of similar, I suppose. I'm haven't been diagnosed with what you've been diagnosed with, but I'm pretty sure I have it. I can never pronounce it, so I'm not even going to try because I always get it wrong. But I have all the symptoms of it, but I've never had that diagnosis. But I think there's an element of like a postcode lottery when it comes to mental health and therapies that are out there in the UK. It's very sort of similar to, I was talking about postcode lotteries when it comes to the justice system as well, and like what detectives you get in the police force and things. And I think it's very similar to mental health. And I'm based in Surrey. I know Surrey is a huge county, but I'm in Surrey. And for me, finding therapy was incredibly hard. There was just nothing out there. I mean, there was, but the wait lists were a year longer sometimes. And I thought, well, but I need something now. Like, I can't wait another year. What am I going to do in that time? So I had to go private, and I'm still private, and I still pay for my therapy every 2 weeks. God knows how much I've spent on therapy in the last 8 years now. I've been having therapy for 8 years, and I got a little bit of therapy for free when I say free, but when I was going through the court case and the trial, I had a little bit, but then as soon as it was a guilty verdict, that ended. And yeah, so since then I've been paying privately, and I've had a few different types. I've had CBT and other talking therapies, but I think you have to be in that kind of right headspace to want to do it, and you have to be there, don't you, and want to start it, because if you don't, and it's not going to work for you. Because I remember before I went to the police, which was 8 years ago now, I had therapy before that, but it wasn't for me, and I couldn't do it, and I didn't like it, and I think it's because I just wasn't ready to do it and to start processing what happened to me. And I think that is something that survivors feel a lot of the time, is that fear, the shame, the confusion of what happened to you, or just knowing like where to go and where to begin. So massive message that I want to put out there is that if you are listening and you feel stuck, that is completely normal. Or if you've tried it and you think, no, I'm not ready, that's totally fine. And you can always come back for it. And there is no right way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no sort of, there's a starting point, but there's no starting point, if that makes sense. It's it's what's right for you in the moment. And sometimes it is a case of just stumbling across the right thing. And I think that's definitely what happened to me. I knew what I needed, but I didn't know really how to access it. And there was so many other things. When that CBT course came to an end, I was just trying to really focus on my physical well-being and trying to just wrap my head around living with this. And it wasn't until about 3 years later when my dad suddenly passed away, and it was a very sort of traumatic event for me. I won't go into it now, but it was very raw, and I was very close to my dad. And I think I was experiencing grief, of course, at that point. And I think for me, I mean, grief isn't linear. I think we all know that. But I think for me, there was a significant delayed sort of response. It took a few months, and then it was like suddenly all of it just came rushing at me in one moment. And I think I was working from home. It was the middle of COVID, and I was due to go on a work call and deliver this big presentation. And I just froze, literally. I just froze. It was 5 minutes before. And something that I never really had massive problems with, but suddenly it became this big thing and I couldn't do it. And I just sent a really lame excuse to my manager at the time and just said, can't be here. Urgent thing came up. Really sorry. I just switched off. I pulled the plug from my internet connection. I threw myself into my room. I shut the door and I called Samaritans. I just couldn't cope. And I just felt like I really needed help in that moment, like massively needed help. I didn't know what I needed exactly, but I just felt really alone and really overwhelmed, really confused. And I think it was like almost a panic attack. I was really struggling to breathe. And the Samaritans really saved me that day. And the lady on the other end of the phone, I think that was a turning point for me in terms of starting my therapy journey in earnest. And she was just amazing. And I'm so grateful that they were there in that moment. And I think I was having a breakdown, but not really realizing that I was having a breakdown. It's only hindsight's a wonderful thing. And sometimes in the moment, you don't realize what's fully happening to you. And then from then on, I started to find, I've been through various services since. But yeah, I think that was the moment that everything started to change.
I had a similar situation to you. I mean, you called the Samaritans. I called the NSPCC helpline back in 2017, and that was like a big turning point for me as well. I genuinely think if I hadn't have called them, I don't know where I would be right now. I genuinely don't know, and I talk about that a lot because it was a lifeline, and it saved me. That call that day, speaking to that guy for an hour, he really truly believed me, and he was the one that told me if I go to the police, this is what will happen. And that's exactly what I did. And it was kind of just, it all sort of spiraled from there. And I did then start therapy, and it did help. And then the court case ended in 2019, end of 2019. And it was actually, it's going to be 6 years tomorrow since I found out he was found guilty. So it's a big, big anniversary for me tomorrow. And I always get very funny around the time. I get a lot of anxiety and such, but I'm going out for some dinner with my daughter, so that'll help. But then we went into 2020 and we went into COVID, and I had absolutely no support around me whatsoever. And the wait lists for everything back in 2020 and 2021 was just, I mean, there was just no point trying to reach out because you would have just been looked at and been thought, no. And we all know that mental health declined massively in those couple of years during COVID. And then it was in 2022, end of summer 2022, that I started getting really bad. And I actually had a bit of a nervous breakdown and was admitted to hospital. And then I thought, right, I've got to do something else. And that's when I found the therapist that I actually have now. And she's absolutely incredible. But it took a long time to find that person that I trust with everything, that understands CSA and it's CBT that she helps me with. But she also she's talking therapy. I talk to her about everything. And it's taken a long time to get to someone that I really, really trust in. And that's a lot. And that takes a lot as well, because you really need to have someone that you fully 100% trust and can understand your triggers and what's happening with you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, let's talk about the types of therapy people might hear about, because the names alone can make you feel like, well, it's kind of like another language. I hadn't heard about hardly any of these when I started. I was like, what are you talking about? And actually, I only found out about one of them a couple of weeks ago. So, and, I'm very into my healing journey and my therapy journey, but I still didn't know what it was. So let's break them down sort of simply, I suppose. So the first one we kind of mentioned, we've touched on a few times, is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And you can get trauma-focused CBT, which is the one that I have with my therapist. I really like it. It's really worked for me with the negative thoughts and the intrusive thoughts that I have, and reframing those. It is good for my triggers and my flashbacks. Practical, that you have, she's given me structured things to do, and it is often the first line of therapy on the NHS, and that's actually how I found her, because I had, like I mentioned, I had that breakdown, was admitted to hospital, and then I managed to get her. It did take 6 weeks to get an initial consultation with her, but then I've carried on with her privately. I think I had 8 weeks with her on the NHS, and then I've carried on. So I really like CBT, and it's good for you if you want structure and tools. And it helped me when I felt like a sudden panic attack coming on, or anxiety. For example, I love like the anchoring statements. So that's when you say, right, that was then, this is now. I survived, I'm here, it's not happening anymore. My body feels afraid, but I'm safe. And they really, really help me. I sort of do ground myself and anchor myself. And I find CBT really helpful, but not everyone gets on with it. So it's kind of one of those ones that you're going to have to sort of dip in and see. And then the other one, that's the one that I only found out about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm having as well, which is EMDR. So eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I keep laughing when I'm doing it. Like the therapist gave me these like vibrating things that you put in your hand, and she was trying to do it, and I couldn't. I kept on laughing, and then I felt really bad that I wasn't focusing. I felt like I was in school, and she was a teacher, and she kept on saying, no, we're going to try it again. This is not working. It's not working. But I think I'm going to try and keep at it.
It's early days.
And yeah, it is meant to be a really good thing. It's amazing for child sexual abuse trauma. It works with memory processing, less talking, more brain-based, helps reduce emotional intensity of trauma memories, which is the one that she was trying to do with me. So my flashbacks, but I wasn't quite getting there. But I think I'm going to keep going, and hopefully I'll stop laughing and she won't get so cross with me. But yeah, Emma, do you have any other trauma-focused therapies that have helped you, or that you know of that you could give some examples of?
I must say, I've never heard of the EMDR before, so I'm going to look into that one. It sounds really interesting. I think for me, I've mainly had the CBT and talking therapy. I just want to touch on that point. Like you said, CBT is often the first line of therapy on the NHS. Following that Samaritan's call, I went through the NHS to just try and get on to and I just wanted anything to kickstart the journey. And the first thing they came back to me was CBT, but because I'd already had a form of CBT, I was a bit reluctant to try that again straight away. I think by just going through CBT to begin with, even though it was very specific to, a particular health condition at the time, I identified that I needed talking therapy. So I had to really push back. And I think that's just a really important point, is if you find something that you really want to try, sometimes you do have to push for it. And it sounds awful to say it, because that you have to do that when you're not well. You have to fight for something. But not everyone perhaps is going to feel that they can do that. But I was really resolute. I was very much, I need this. I want this. Please help. And so they caved and said, fine, we'll put you on the wait list for talking therapy. And I'm so glad they did, because it was at that point that I had a sort of, I think I was offered something like 8 to 12 sessions through the NHS over the phone. It was COVID at the time, but I think regardless, it would have been phone-based anyway. And I really liked that. And that's another point, is that not everything is in person. You can have done via Zoom or Teams video call, or you can have it over the phone if you perhaps don't want to or can't get to a sort of physical space. And I found it easier not looking somebody in the face and divulging all these deep, dark thoughts that I had and talking about these experiences. And I think sometimes when you do have limited sessions, you feel like you've got to just blurt as much out as you can so you don't miss anything. And I didn't realize how much stuff I had to share and talk about. And it was the first time that I actually said the words child sexual abuse out loud and that it happened to me, because I think before that it felt like it was very much it's happened to somebody else and I was just telling a story. I was a person that was like a fly on the wall. And it was that moment that she stopped me and she just said, I'm not the right person to help you with this. And I was really stunned, but I was also really grateful that she was honest, that it was perhaps beyond the kind of remit of that kind of sort of service. And then she pointed me in the direction of a specific child sexual abuse charity that was offering therapy and counselling to adult survivors of child sexual abuse. And then I went into a sort of a 10-month, I don't want to say course, but it was offered for 10 months program. That's the word I'm looking for, with a local charity who were absolutely amazing. And then when that came to an end, I had a bit of a break. They often recommend you have a break if you are changing, because I was really devastated when that came to an end, because you do build a bond with your therapist or counsellor. And that's really important to recognise that not everybody you're going to encounter through any kind of therapy, you're not going to perhaps bond with everybody, but sometimes when you do build up that relationship, it can be very difficult when it comes to an end. And then I went into, like you, Chloe, private therapy, and it took a couple of attempts to find the right person. And I've been with that person now for 2 years. So yeah, I think to answer your question, I've very much been focusing on talking therapy. That's what I found really helpful. I have a lot of thoughts. I've had a lot of other things happen apart from child sexual abuse, but I think it always leads back to that particular incident, always leads back to child sexual abuse. And then there's a lot of other things that are surrounded that, including losing my dad as well. But I think I've got to that stage where I realized that sometimes going back to those tools that I learned in CBT, I'm going back to perhaps some of those sort of anchoring things or those grounding techniques, or sometimes when it's the middle of the day and I'm maybe at work or out grocery shopping, suddenly sometimes it doesn't take anything, or you're not quite sure what's triggered something, but you suddenly get thoughts and feelings out of nowhere. And I remember I was just driving. I think I was just literally nipping into my nearest town for something a few weeks ago. And it was like that moment when I'd lost my dad suddenly just came crushing back into my brain out of nowhere. And I needed to pull over. I needed to sit there and do some deep breathing and learn how to park it perhaps when I'm in a safer space. It's just those kind of things, and just coping with that sort of overwhelm. And I've been thinking lately, perhaps maybe it would be good to go back and do a bit more CBT. I don't think it's once you've done it, that's it, you've got to stop. I think that's another important thing, is you can revisit different therapies at different times when you need them.
Yeah, definitely. And because like going back to healing isn't linear. You're going to want to try different things, and you'll get to a point where you might think, okay, CBT was great, but now I want to try something else. And my therapist is predominantly CBT, but she does a lot of talking therapies with me, and we talk about a lot of things. But then I'm trying this EMDR as well, so I'm trying a bit of everything, because I don't think there's not going to be one thing that's definitely going to fix it. You have to, and one thing I have definitely come to terms with is that I'm probably going to need therapy for the rest of my life if I don't want to spiral, if I don't want to have another breakdown like I had back in 2022. I have to have this regular check-in with her, and I have her every 2 weeks, and then my EMDR every couple of weeks. It's costing me an absolute fortune, don't get me wrong, but I think it would be detrimental to me and my daughter and my family if I didn't. And coming to terms with that was really hard, because I think when you start therapy, you think, well, I did anyway, not everyone thinks this, but I thought, it's going to fix me, I'm going to be okay, I'll have some talking therapies, I'll get over it. No. That has not happened. Yeah, it's not. So I think that's another thing to really think about as well, is that when you start, don't think that it's going to fix it, because everyone's different, obviously. But from my experience, it hasn't fixed it. It helps, and I learn how to monitor it. And like you were talking about when you were driving in your car, don't you just love those intrusive thoughts that pop into your head out of nowhere? And, you're doing something random and then all of a sudden it's, oh, okay. But learning how to deal with those and knowing that those intrusive thoughts will never stop. That's one thing that my therapist said to me. She said, we can't stop the intrusive thoughts because they will always come, because they're very normal. It's not just people that have had experiences with CSA or trauma. Everyone gets these intrusive thoughts. It's how you manage them. And that's what you work on. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to mention another one that I found really, really interesting. And it's called somatic therapy. I don't know if you've heard of that or experienced it. It is a kind of movement and ground. I've never done it, but I've done a bit of research on it. And it focuses on how the trauma lives in your body. And I don't know if you've heard or read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's quite a famous book. Quite a lot of people know about it. And it's about how the trauma stays in your body. And it comes out in so many different ways. Again, kind of like what we're talking about with our immune disorders and physical disorders and things. And it's like a lot of breath work, grounding. And it is very, very good for people that have gone through child sexual abuse, because it often causes body disconnection and all of those symptoms. I haven't tried it, but I would really like to. So definitely going to have a look into that. And another one that I wanted to mention, there's a man that is also another lived experience advocate for the NSPCC. He does a lot. And he came on and at a meeting that we had, and he did a speech. And he was talking about another therapy that he did where it's psychedelic therapy. So you take specific and special mushrooms and how you connect with different parts of your brain. I've never done that either, but I'm really, really intrigued about it. Really intrigued. I've never really sort of touched that sort of stuff before, and there's a part of me that's a bit scared too. But he said it was the most eye-opening out of all the therapies that he's tried. He said that was the best thing that he's ever done. And I think he went somewhere in Amsterdam and he did it. And it was very controlled. And, you've got people all around you and things, but it taps into a completely different part of your brain that you're not tapping into on the daily basis. So I think that's a really interesting one. I can definitely find out some links about that and put that on at the end. Have you ever tried group therapy?
No, I've not tried group therapy. I think for me, I'm not sure it would be the right thing, but I can see the benefits. I can see that totally helping to break isolation, perhaps. Have you tried group therapy?
No, I've never tried it, but I think I would be interested to explore it, because it's bringing that idea of not being alone and being in a room with other people that have had similar experiences to you. I have been in a room with other people that have similar experiences to me in different situations over the last couple of years. I actually really suffer with, when I'm in that situation, I really suffer with imposter syndrome.
Likewise.
And I sort of sit there and I go, oh, mine's not as bad. And I really suffer with that. So I don't know if that would be the right path for me. I think it could help lots of people though, because, it's that element of that community and you're not alone. But yeah, I don't think it's for everyone. I think you'd have to maybe try it and see how it works for you.
Yeah, it's a connection. I think it could be really powerful. And I think if you're quite comfortable being within a group, I know for me, I prefer being one-to-one or sort of in a very tiny group of people. Same reasons you just said, I get imposter syndrome, I'd probably shut down maybe. But I think, yeah, if you're perhaps a little bit more extroverted by nature or just comfortable within a group, I've known of other sort of types of group support, not perhaps for this, but where it's really combated isolation. And I think it perhaps could work a bit similar to like sort of mother and baby groups, that kind of thing, where you're suddenly new to a situation or discovering something about yourself and just perhaps want to be with like-minded people or share stories, techniques, that kind of thing.
Yeah. or just knowing that you're in a situation or in a safe room, that you don't necessarily have to talk about child sexual abuse or traumas, but you're just in a safe space knowing that people are around you that have been through it. So I think there's another element of, well, especially with me, is that sometimes when I'm in a room, I don't know if you get this, or maybe I'm just strange, but sometimes I'm in a room of people that I don't know, and I've had this urge to stand up and go, I've been sexually abused.
Yeah.
I have no idea why. Obviously, I don't do that. I don't do it, but I really want to do it sometimes, and just sort of, I don't know why. It's really strange. So
it's so amazing you just said that, because I thought I was alone in that. You suddenly just want to blurt out in what's probably a very inappropriate situation or place. Sometimes not even related. And it just
completely not related.
It's like an all body experience, isn't it?
It really is. And honestly, I have to fight every ounce of me to not do it. And it is a very inappropriate time to do it, very unrelated, completely random. But I just want to blurt it out. So having a room full of other people that probably feel like that as well.
Perhaps more of an appropriate space.
Yeah, very appropriate space, just to say, this is what happened to me. But then also you don't want to trigger other people. So it's a bit of a funny one. But then I suppose if you're in a trauma-informed room and you've got people that are protecting everyone, then yeah, I've never really done it, but I would be open to it. I've always sort of said I'm going to be open to everything. I think
it's a good attitude to have.
It's important. And the last one that I've got down here is creative therapies. I do this, but in my own sort of time. I do a lot of singing. I love to sing. And I haven't been for a very long time, but I go to a choir down the road, and singing, honestly, is the best thing for the soul. I really think it is, because you don't have to think about anything else, and you can just get into a song. You don't have to be good. Scream at the top of your lungs if you have to, but it is the best kind of therapy, and it really helps me. I do love singing. I should sing more. I should just sing. I wish we were in a musical, we could just blurt out. I think people would look at me like I was very strange, but I haven't ever tried art therapy though. I'm not very good at art. I think I would get frustrated that I'm not very good.
I've not done art therapy, but I've done like art. What is it like sip and paint kind of classes, those sort of things. And it's almost like a form of therapy, I think. I know it's not done in the same sort of way, perhaps, as actual art therapy, but you know what? It doesn't matter if you're not very good at it. And that's the joy.
Yeah.
You can just sit there, and it's in a small group, and you can just lose yourself for a whole evening. And it's amazing how your mind focuses on, and you don't think about anything else when you're doing it. It's so refreshing. It's so refreshing.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? You can't think of anything else. I went to a pottery class a couple of weeks ago, and I was really looking forward to it, but I got so frustrated because I was so bad. And then I get really frustrated with myself. I'm like, why am I not good at this? I should be good, even though I've never done pottery before in my whole entire life. But obviously, me being the self-critical person that I am, why am I not good? For God's sake, Chloe. And I just got really, really fed up, and I got really annoyed. So that's probably not for me. But musical therapy, singing, drama, I think is also another thing as well. I found my love for acting because of what happened to me. It was the only thing that I actually knew that I was quite good at, and I was not academic at all. I was very, very, very severely dyslexic. So, but with acting, getting a script, I could learn within a couple of minutes, and I have like a bit of a photographic memory. So I loved that, and I could become someone completely different. I absolutely loved it. So for however long, I didn't have to be myself. And again, you can't really think about anything else because you're thinking of your lines and the character that you are. And so maybe like Amdram is really good kind of therapy as well.
My partner's done drama therapy, and as well as been sort of part of Amdram groups. And similarly to you, says the same sort of things. Absolutely loves not being themselves and just embodying somebody completely different. And again, it's I wouldn't call it a distraction, but it just takes your mind away from everything else and just allows you to be. But also, I think it's a really good way of projecting emotions. You know, you channel those emotions inside of you and projecting them through perhaps a different character or in a different situation, or I guess a bit like your pottery class as well, even though you were really frustrated, perhaps there was a lot of I'm just going to sound like a therapist now, perhaps inside there was a little bit of inner frustration in that moment. And it was a nice sort of vehicle to release those inner emotions, those frustrations, just through the kind of activity that you're doing. I suppose it's a bit like, I guess, play therapy as well. You know, when you're, I know they use that a lot for children a lot, but, you know, with sand trays, you put your hand in the sand and it just grounds you with your body, and you're sort of experiencing things through its different senses, and it gets you to start talking and feeling and connecting with your body again. So I imagine, again, a bit like me, you know what, I would love to try music therapy. That is something that I would really like to try. I find music a really good way for me to help connect with my emotions. I don't know about you, but I'm not very good at recognizing how I'm feeling in the moment a lot. But there's something about music that kind of connects mind, body, and soul for me. And suddenly I get surges of emotion, whether I'm just listening to music or whether I'm singing or playing a musical instrument. I'm very musical anyway. Perhaps that's maybe why it works for me. And, you know, if I'm suddenly start feeling perhaps upset about something, then it's sometimes for music, I don't know what it is, but I'll go to music to help either release that, or if I'm perhaps in a situation where maybe it is when I'm driving down the road and suddenly, you know, I get that intrusive thought and I'm not prepared or ready for it, I actually turn music off because I know that it will overwhelm me. So if I'm listening to music in that moment, I'll just stop it and I'll take myself to a safer space and then start it again and help then release that emotion. So sometimes you get to know what helps you and perhaps what hinders you as well. But then again, with that, there's an element of control, and maybe doing creative therapies, maybe that might help me not worry too much about being in control all the time. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Feel free to stop me.
No, I think it's really interesting. And I think kind of going back to, I think exploring lots of different therapies is a great thing to do, because you don't know what's going to work for you and what's not. Music is a great one. Like singing is great, but listening to music as well. I listen to some music, but very similar to what you were saying, I can get very, very overwhelmed, have ADHD. I can get very overstimulated very quickly, depending on what kind of, or where my brain is at that point. I love listening to sort of classical music, but different. I don't like, this isn't going to sound, I'm not real classical music. That's not the right words for it, but I'm not musical at all. But does that make any sense? It's not.
I think so.
I love listening to, it's classed as classical music and it goes on to classical FM, but it's music from movies and things like that.
Soundtracks.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the word I should have said. Yeah, soundtracks. But it really, and I'm very visual, so when I listen to movie soundtracks, I can then picture the film that it's come from, and that really helps to ground me as well. But again, it can overstimulate me, and so it kind of depends what mood I'm in. I'm either going to bawl my eyes out or I'm going to be really happy and uplifted. But it's kind of like you were saying, it's kind of what works for you, and you get used to that, don't you? And what's going to trigger your body. So yeah, let's move on to how to access these therapies that we've just spoken about. This is the bit that I think is the hardest, because, you know, we're talking about the NHS, and I think this is where people get stuck of finding them. You can do as much research as you possibly can, but trying to find how to actually access it, I think, is really tricky. So I've put a few things down here. Like option A, the NHS. Obviously, it's free, but we all know that the NHS is struggling and the wait lists are very long, and you can be on it for a very, very long time before you actually hear anything. A GP referral for counselling, CBT, EMDR. I think that was where the only reason I went onto the NHS is because I had that nervous breakdown and I was admitted to hospital. But I think I would have definitely have done that. But I remember when I went to the doctors back in 2017, and the doctor, he wasn't great. And he said to me, well, there's no point me putting you on the wait list because it's just months and months and months and months. So maybe just come back. Okay, Well, that's great advice. Thank you. But yeah, so that you got the NHS, but it's going to be a long wait. Look, you might get seen, who knows? And I think, like we were saying at the beginning, postcode lottery, kind of where you are in the UK. Option B, charities. I mean, we were talking about charities. They've worked for us and they were detrimental to our healing and our processing and how we've got to where we are. You've got charities like Rape Crisis, Survivors Trust, Samaritans that you mentioned, NSPCC, and some of these do offer free trauma counselling. You would have to look into them because some of them don't. The NSPCC only offers trauma counselling to children and young people, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that they do. It's not for adults. But you can call the NSPCC helpline for anything that you need to have advice on or you need to speak to someone. They are fantastic. Option C, which we've spoken about, private therapy, you have more choice. Obviously, you don't have to wait as long. Sessions, I put down here and I researched between £40 to £90 per session. But again, depends where you are in the UK, I think, and what kind of therapist you're looking for. Because in the area that I am, I think CBT's less. And that is typically around the 40 to 90 mark. The EMDR around the area that I am, I'm paying £150 per session, which is a lot of money. So kind of do your research, I think, and see what you can get.
And also, just to point out as well, is that with cost per session, you can sometimes negotiate with the therapist as well. I know some therapists sort of ask if you're comfortable to share what your kind of income is, what you're comfortable paying, and sometimes you can negotiate. So if you are on lower income, sometimes they might be able to help you out a little bit. I'm not sure, I can't speak for every therapist, but I know a couple of therapists that have done that before.
Well, that's really good to know. I didn't realize that was an option or a thing. So that's really, like you said, yeah, obviously not every therapist is necessarily going to do that, but to definitely state that would help. I would also say check the therapist is trained in trauma and CSA if that's what you're looking for. You were saying that person said to you, I can't help you with this, even though it was a good thing that she did because you then found someone else. But that was also it was quite shocking for you.
Yes.
And you don't if you're not in that right headspace and you're not in that right place, that could be quite detrimental, I think. So, and then I've put here option D as well, the specialist CSA services. So you have the sexual assault referral centres, the independent sexual violence advocates, trauma-informed programs, this podcast, for instance. This is a talking, well, not a talking, well, we're talking, but listening therapies. There are lots of social media groups and communities and pages that will help as well. It might not be the right thing for you at that time, but I know social media definitely helped me as well. Like seeing pages of people talking about it made me feel less alone. So yeah, anything else you'd like to add, Emma? Or
yeah, I guess just point out that, you know, the child sexual abuse sort of recovery program that I went through was through a local charity, and it was a sort of, I suppose, free trauma counselling. But then when I moved to private therapy, that was again also facilitated through a local charity here. So it's a little bit unusual, is that they offer, it's like having private therapy sessions, but because it's a charity, they're done on reduced rates. So it's still that similar sort of private therapy contract that you would have. So it's worth just exploring, because they're all specifically trained therapists that perhaps are trained in very specific sort of areas. So, for example, CSA, childhood trauma, sexuality, gender identity, you know, anything like any kind of particular topic. So, you know, when you go for an initial assessment, you can talk about what particular needs you might have, and you can go in with confidence. So if you're wanting something like private therapy, but you feel it quite daunting and overwhelming to try and select a particular therapist, because sometimes it can take a little bit of time, finding perhaps a local service like that, if you have one in your local area, can take that pressure off your shoulders a little bit. And if it doesn't work, that's still okay. Because sometimes I think you start and you feel a bit guilty because you don't want to, you might feel feelings of guilt. You think, oh, they're giving the time, even though I'm paying for it. And you feel a bit guilty if you don't get along, perhaps, or you're finding that you're not quite gelling, or you're not getting the right sort of feeling perhaps from that therapist. And it is okay to just pause and ask to start again. That's also very okay.
Yeah, I think that is finding the right person for you. And I've had that guilt before where I've been speaking to someone and I've thought, when is this going to finish? I just want to get out of this room. I don't want to be here. She's not understanding what I'm saying. I'm sure she would be perfect for other people, but she was not right for me. And I couldn't get out of the room quick enough. And I did feel very guilty because, again, it was something that I was given on the NHS, and I was like, I've been giving this, but I don't like it. Not because she was horrible or anything. She was a lovely lady. We just didn't click. And I did feel guilty. But then my mum actually said to me, no, Chloe, don't speak to someone that you don't want to speak to, because this is a real thing for you. So
got to feel comfortable.
Absolutely. So important, because you are telling them your deepest, darkest traumas and your whole life story. It's really, really intense, and you've got to feel that trust with that person. We kind of touched on this really, but it's what is right for me. And I think we've touched on it, but there's no perfect therapy for everyone. There is only what you feel safe. Your body is calm. You understand that the person that you're speaking to understands your trauma and helps you move forward, and kind of going back onto finding that therapist that's going to work for you and you're feeling okay with them. And it's okay to try things and change your mind, like we just kind of mentioned. So yeah, do you have anything else you want to add, or do you want to move on to the tips and exercises? I've got a few down here, but I wanted to see if you had any that you wanted to share with anyone as well.
Sure. I think just going back to what is right for me, just one extra thing. I think it is going to take time. And I know you said earlier that it's not going to fix things, but it does help. But give yourself the space for it to take time, because sometimes you just want things to get better immediately. And I know with my last therapist, it took me a good year before I really started to trust. And I think trust is a massive thing, especially as I'd hopped around quite a bit and also had services come to an end, which was outside of my control. So yeah, sometimes it then becomes a big thing. So yeah, don't be upset with yourself. Be kind to yourself through this process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess with the sort of particular sort of things that might help, I do have a couple, but by all means, go. You can start. You start.
Okay, cool. I love this one. I do this with my daughter, and I find it a really great grounding exercise. And it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And it really centers you and brings you back to where you need to be. It helps flashbacks. I do it a lot when I'm having those really horrible intrusive thoughts and I'm thinking, I don't want to be thinking about this right now. I'm at the pub having a lovely glass of wine and I'm thinking about something really horrific, or what the F? Stop it, Chloe. I do those. I sometimes take myself off to the toilet, or I do it there, and I just probably look like a weirdo, but I do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it really does help me. It's taken a while to get there, and I think that's another thing with these techniques and these exercises. It's not going to be a quick fix. You might find it a bit funny. You might find it a bit awkward. It might not work for you straight away, but I've carried on with this, and I don't always do it. Sometimes I forget about it, but if I do, I think, oh, I'm going to try that exercise, and it really does help me ground myself, and it gets those horrible intrusive thoughts out of your brain.
It's really good attacks as well, that grounding technique.
Yeah.
And it's really good if you particularly struggle with panic attacks, if you've got somebody who you really trust around you, and if you can share with them this grounding technique, they can help you bring you back to the present through that technique. It's really brilliant.
Yeah. I think it's one of the, and I do, like I said, I do it with my daughter, and she really likes it. And, you know, because she's then, as a child as well, she then completely forgets about everything, especially 5 things that you can see. She's like, it tells me about 10 or 15 things she can see. And straight away, that intrusive thought or that anxiety that she's had completely goes. And it really does help. So definitely one biggest tips for people to try that. Do you want to say an exercise or tips that you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the container exercise. So, imagine something in your mind where you can mentally box away or store intrusive thoughts. So it's, again, like when I mentioned earlier, sometimes you have those intrusive thoughts at really inappropriate moments, and you need to almost compartmentalize and box them up, and not to ignore them, but just put them to one side. So then when you are in a safer place, you can unbox them again and address them one by one, almost like a list exercise. You can go through each one and go, okay, is that real? Or is that just my mind being horrible to me? And you can then almost throw away the things that are definitely not real. And the things that are real, you can then focus on those, and it's more of a practical solution. And so you almost get the emotions from them, but then it leaves you the space then to just focus on your emotions, and it just helps you bring your mind back to that restful state. So it's quite good if you're a visual person, I think, that one. I'm also quite a visual person, so I can almost see that box in my mind, and then almost see the list of things that I'm going to put in there as well. But also you can write those things down. So if you have some kind of way of, if you got pen and paper or your phone or something, you can just write those things down and then say, right, 4 o'clock later, I'm going to address those. And it just helps you then, so you can actually carry on with your day and it doesn't interrupt your flow.
That's a really good tip. I've never done that, where I've say, right, I'm going to write this down, but I'm going to address it later. I don't know if my brain would do that, but I would definitely try. I'm going to definitely try and see if I can do that. No, that doesn't sound
I'll make
easy
it sound
at all.
easier than it actually is. But it was something that I learned. It was something that I actually learned through the child sexual abuse trauma program. My therapist there just gave me a bit of a practical tip. Yeah, it was a good one. It sounds like something that you'd learn in CBT, really. But yeah, that took me by surprise. But I was like, thank you for that one. If they use that.
Yeah, and
it's helped.
Definitely going to try that. Yeah, I'm going to try it. Like I said, I'm not sure how. Again, going back to what I said, it's not going to be a quick fix. You have to really work on these in order to get them to work. So I will definitely try that next time. I'll write it down in my phone, and I'll put like a little reminder. This is what I need to address at 4 o'clock, and see if I can do it. Another one that I've since doing EMDR is the butterfly tapping. Again, I have been trying this quite a lot. Didn't work on me straight away, but it's where you cross your arms on your chest like a butterfly, and you tap with 2 fingers at the top of your collarbone. And apparently it's meant to help the nervous system. It's a good one when you're having a panic attack or you're feeling that anxiety like getting worse and worse and worse. Put your arms out, and you sort of hugging yourself, and you're making yourself know that you'll feel safe, and you're tapping your shoulders on your collarbone. And it didn't work for me straight away, but I actually tried it the other day and it really worked. I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is helping me. And it brought down my anxiety, and my breathing came down, and it did regulate what I was feeling. So yeah, not one, EMDR, like I've said, it's a new one for me, but I think it takes time, and it did really help me.
I'm going to try that one. I like the sound of that. Because I find somebody then comes behind me and just crosses their arms over my chest and squeezes. I find that helps. So I think if you don't have somebody around you, that sounds like a really good one to try.
Yeah, like you're squeezing yourself, like you're giving yourself a hug, you're feeling safe. And apparently it helps the nervous system, which is the reason that we are in fight flight the whole time. So our nervous system is out of kilt. So yeah, it did help. Do you have another one?
Yeah, I guess this is a little bit like meditation, I suppose, and somebody reads a really lovely sort of description of a place to help you visualize somewhere far away, like a nice sandy beach on a tropical island. I'm not saying you've got to do that, but I sometimes just find picturing or imagining a safe place where I feel totally relaxed, really protected, almost like a happy place. Picture a happy place, and it just strikes a little bit when you're feeling particularly overwhelmed or there's something that might have triggered you. So sometimes it's almost like taking yourself back to a happier time, or just a place where you feel completely relaxed, and you almost can visualize yourself then in that place and reimagine those feelings, and then those feelings become real feelings again. So yeah, I think sometimes, perhaps an episode where you're feeling particularly overwhelmed, that might be a very hard thing to do. So it's probably something that I would use in conjunction with another technique. I'm just thinking perhaps the butterfly tapping might be a good way to start. And then once you're perhaps feeling a little bit calmer, then you can take yourself to a safe place and just visualize your safe place. And that would be something unique to everybody.
I love that. I actually only found out recently, though, and I found this really interesting, that not everyone can visualize things the way that I thought everyone visualizes things. So I have a safe space. I have it with my daughter. We go to a willow tree and I visualize it for her and I talk about it out loud and she closes her eyes. And actually she turned to me the other day and she said, "Mummy, I'm really sorry. I can't see it." And I thought, "What do you mean you can't see it?" I said, "Yeah, you just close your eyes and you visualize it." And she said, I can't see it. And I thought, "What does she mean?" And then I actually asked my dad and I asked my mum. And I said, "Can you do that?" And they went, "Well, yeah, sort of, but not really the way that you're describing it." And I thought, "Well, is this just me then?" And then I looked into it and apparently, yeah, it's not everyone can visualize something. I think there's like 3 stages of how you can visualize something. And someone was saying, if you visualize an apple, if you close your eyes, how do you see an apple? Some people see it as like a drawing. Some people see it as just a 2D, and some people can see it as the actual apple. And I see it as an actual apple. And
I'm with you on that.
Very, very. It's apparently with people like with ADHD and ASD and things that they have a different way of our brains processing. So I found that really interesting, because when I visualize, I can see it clear as day, like it's a movie, and not everyone can do that. So yeah, it works for me. It might not work for everyone. Yeah, but I do like doing that. I do like going to a visualizing place, and it does calm me. But like you were saying, if you're in a very fight sort of state and you're not that calm, you might not be able to get there. So yeah, working with that butterfly tapping could be really great. Another one that I thought was quite interesting, the anchoring one, where I say, "I'm safe, I'm here, the memory isn't happening now." And this helps with my dissociation, because I have that a lot, where I don't feel like I'm in the right. It's very weird. And it does help me going, "I'm fine, I'm safe. I have little 2 rocks around my house that say everything's going to be okay. And I have it in my kitchen, and I have it in my living room, and I have it upstairs. And even just seeing that, and I go, everything's going to be okay. It sort of grounds me and it calms me. Yeah, I like doing those. It works for me. It's not going to work for everyone. So if we go on to our experiences now, we can gently and lightly touch on our own experiences with the therapy world, and not center around the episode, but to normalize it and normalize our journey. If you don't mind, Emma, can you give us just a very short touch on your journey with therapy and how it's helped you or hasn't helped you, and what kind of experiences you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it took a long time for me to come forward and even realize, A, what therapy was, and B, that it was actually something that I thought, yeah, actually this could be really beneficial. It wasn't until I was introduced to it when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, and then just going for that CBT, which I think I mentioned earlier, that I realized that I really needed something like talking therapy. And it just took a while for me to wrap my head around the fact that it's okay to actually need to access it. Like, just, it's okay to actually want it. It's okay to actually open up. There's so much stigma, I think, attached to therapy. I know just from experience of talking to other people, like, you don't need something like that, or you're not somebody with great sort of mental health difficulties, and the word shrink has popped up, and it's still very taboo. And I think over the last few years, actually, since I've accessed therapy, I've noticed that stigma has lessened somewhat. We're all so much better at talking about it. And that's made me feel then a lot more comfortable to open up and say, yeah, I do go to therapy. And I've also tried to really normalize it myself, not just to me, but to others around me. And actually, it's been such an incredible journey. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to have accessed the therapy that I have accessed. And I've, come to really love it, actually. And mainly because I've learned so much more about myself since going. And it's not just about I'm going to say the phrase getting over stuff. It's not about necessarily getting over stuff, because it is a journey, even though you work through things and it can be very difficult. It's not just this cyclical journey that you go on. It's very up and down. But actually the things that I've learned about myself along the way have helped me reframe so much about my past experiences, and for the better. For example, I've discovered that I'm neurodivergent. One of my therapists that I worked with, who specializes in neurodiversity, suggested one day, Anna, do you think perhaps that you might be autistic? And I was like, what? No, surely not. And that wasn't a thing that I just didn't ever comprehend associating that with myself. It just never crossed my mind at all. And then my partner, who specializes in special educational needs, said to me one day, have you thought that maybe you're neurodivergent, perhaps autistic? And again, I went, no. But it was actually once that therapist said it to me, I thought maybe there is something in this. And it's because it's somebody who isn't necessarily close to me. It's somebody that's a bit more impartial in my life. So I thought, oh, there must be something in this. And then I went on a completely different journey then, or another path. I just took another path on my life journey. And I think it just highlighted the fact that I think as a girl as well, I think I just flew under the radar. I was always really quiet at school, or I became a lot quieter. And it's just, again, I don't think I was noticed. And I think for girls especially, I know this is a whole different topic, but for girls especially, I think it's easier for us to just fly under the radar when you're neurodivergent. And I think it just highlighted that perhaps I was a very vulnerable child without knowing. But I think the main point of this is that therapy has helped me reframe those previous experiences, which I think is really important. It's highlighted again that it wasn't my fault. It's highlighted again that I was a vulnerable young person, and that it also doesn't define me. It's not the only thing about me, which I think in our minds, I don't know if you feel the same way, but sometimes in our minds, it sometimes feels, because it's so present a lot of the time, it almost overtakes other things about you at least for a long time. So therapy helps you realize that you are still a person that has lots of other different qualities and different characteristics, different experiences that make up who you are really good as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that. That was really insightful and very similar to my experiences as well. Yeah, I found that therapy, I didn't want to do it for so long. I think there was stigma around my idea of it. And I think you see it in the movies and you see it on TV, and it is that kind of that shrink. You've got a real serious issue type thing. Oh my God. But since having it's the best thing I ever did. And it wasn't a click, I'm healed. It's not that. It is that reframing. I think that's a really great word that you've used, reframing everything that happened to you and understanding. It was for me the understanding of it. And when I would tell her certain things, she would say, that's why, or this is the reason why. And I would go, okay. And seeing it from a completely different perspective and point of view. And it really helped me process it and understand it. And like you said as well, knowing that it wasn't my fault, because for so many years I did carry around that guilt and that shame of, I let it happen. Why didn't I say anything? It's completely me. I made it happen. He told me that I was beautiful, and then that's my fault then. And I'm been diagnosed I've got neurodiversity as well, and I've got a few things. I just name them as I've got all the Ds: OCD, ASD, ADHD. And it's only been in the last couple of years that my therapist has said to me, do you think that this could be a possibility? And I went, absolutely not. I haven't got autism. What are you talking about? No. And then someone else said it to me, do you think? No. And then another person. And I thought, actually, if a few people are saying it to me, maybe there's something in this. So maybe I should think about it. And then with all the research that I've done and talking to people, it all makes sense. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, no, I am definitely. But I think, again, it's a different topic, but there's so much stigma around that as well. But I find it very interesting because another thing that I've been researching about neurodiversity and trauma is how they can be connected, and how there's research going into it about whether people that have had extreme trauma, like child sexual abuse, if we are actually neurodivergent or it's our trauma, and how there's a massive crossover with both of them. And I find that really interesting. So it's whether maybe I'm not, but maybe it's my trauma that's passing off of those in the same way. I don't know, really. I suppose it's more digging into it and having maybe more tests and stuff. And then there's that possibility of maybe that's why I was targeted and why he did what he did, because I was incredibly vulnerable. I had very severe dyslexia and I was very tiny. It started when I was 9, but I looked more like a 7-year-old. I was absolutely minute, incredibly vulnerable. And I think he definitely knew that and he could see that. Yeah. But going back onto the therapy stuff, it has helped me. Like I said, it's not a quick fix and I'm definitely not healed, but it helps me. And it's definitely been a great journey. It's taken a while to get that specific therapist, but I found her and she's fantastic. Yeah, I would advise anyone to just go and do it. It's going to take time to find that right therapist for you, and don't ever feel guilty for not liking, or I think we've mentioned that as well, not liking someone. That's the wrong word, not liking someone.
Not gelling.
Not getting on. Yeah, not gelling, not connecting with that therapist. Find that person that you connect with and it will make everything so much better. It really will. Just talking and getting it out. We hold it in so much. And like you were saying, it's so present in our everyday life. Some days we're okay, some days we're not. And it is a massive part of our identity and who we are. But therapy can, like you were saying, can help us realize that it's not just that. We're not just what happened to us. We are so many other things. And therapy does do that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing what you shared. I think the final message that I'd like to get out to people is, if you are listening and you are feeling lost, I think we have touched on it, we have mentioned it, but no, you don't have to start perfectly. You have to start gently, and there is support out there, and you deserve to heal, and you're not alone. There are so many other people that have been through what you've been through. They're ready to help you. They're ready to listen. So yeah, Emma, do you have any other closing words that you'd like to say before we wrap up the episode today?
I think just echoing what you were saying there, but just reach out, even if it's a tentative first step. It makes all the difference. I think, like you were just saying, we hold it in tight, and sometimes we don't realize how much that is hurting us. And I think just remember that there's always somebody out there who will listen to you, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, just somebody that you feel that you can feel safe around, that will care for you no matter what. Just reach out, just make that first step, because it is absolutely life-changing. But absolutely, you've got to be ready and in the right place.
Yeah. Definitely have to be ready. And you have to want to do it. It's when people say you can't force people to help themselves. They have to be in that headspace, and it's okay if you're not as well. I was not ready for so many years, and that was okay. So you have to be wanting it. You have to be ready. You have to be ready to delve into everything that you've been through as well, because I think another part of therapy is processing what happened to you. So you have to be, and you have to have a lot of support around you as well.
Just go at your own pace. It took me a good year with my last therapist to even open up about what had happened. It was a lot of build up to that, but when the day came, sometimes you're not expecting it, and it comes, and the relief that you actually feel, it is incredible.
I know, it's this big weight that just lifts, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It is very draining though when that happens, because you think, oh my God, like you've been weighed down for so long, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's very strange. But it is a journey, and it's the best journey I've been on. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us today and for sharing all your experiences and your knowledge on therapy. I think it's been a really lovely chat. And thank you for everyone that's listening to the Be Brave podcast. If this episode has helped you, please share it with someone that may need to hear it. And as always, if you've been affected by anything we've spoken about today, please reach out for support. There is so much out there. I will put some details at the end and some numbers that you can reach out to people. So thank you, Emma, so much.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you as always. And have a lovely rest of your day, and Merry Christmas. Have a lovely Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. Speak to you soon.